Hey guys, first Regardsman here, and today I'll be talking about the 10 heroic weapons in Space Marine 2 that every player should have as part of their Astartes arsenal. Heroic weapons were added almost a year ago in patch 10 with the anniversary update as part of the Stratagems game mode, and a lot of players think that heroic weapons are supposed to be a strict upgrade to the relic tier weapons. However, this is not their intended function. They are supposed to instead be a side grade with unique and fun effects to give you different build options and also cool looking skins you can swap over to non-heroic weapons as well. That being said, a few of the heroic weapons in Space Marine 2 are a direct upgrade to their relic tier counterparts and dramatically outperform them to the point that some of them are just the best in slot items for nearly every class they are on. And since unlocking heroic weapons is a time-gated activity, since you are only able to get so many accolades in a given day or week, a lot of players get very stingy with how they want to make their heroic weapon purchases, and I can't really blame them since some hard weekly stratagems just suck. But today I'm going to go over some of the heroic options I think every player should prioritize first, and why these weapons are good and what classes they perform best on, so that by the end of this video, if you're confused where to throw your accolades or just curious about some of these stronger options in the game, you'll have a better idea of just how powerful these items actually are. I also want to say this list is just my opinion, and there are plenty of other heroic weapons that didn't make it in my top 10. They're still absolutely worth taking. So if you really want a heroic weapon first that I didn't mention here, by all means go for what you enjoy, since that is kind of the point of buying a game in the first place. But it's time to get into this heroic weapon list, starting off with number 10, which is the Death's Grasp Power Fist. This is the heroic Power Fist fencing option that came out with the Reclamation update. It has the heroic perk effect follow-up shot that grants you free gun strikes on adjacent Majoris and higher enemies after an execute, and also increases your light attack damage by a whopping 200%, while also decreasing your charge attack damage by 50%. Now, the first thing I want to say about this weapon is that if you are a new player and you are struggling in Space Marine 2 on classes like the Bulwark or Assault, this is the single easiest weapon to use on those classes in game, and all you have to do is slap on armor reinforcement as a perk effect, and your game experience is going to turn into a punch shoot merchant with staggering survivability. And that 200% light attack damage buff with a fencing window makes this weapon incredibly forgiving and one of the strongest options on a lot of stratagem modifiers in the game. Losing 50% heavy attack damage does kind of suck, but a lot of players already struggle to charge this weapon up properly in the first place, and the damage here is actually better than you would expect even with that reduction. So the Death's Grasp Power Fist is an incredibly underrated option in my opinion, and one you should definitely look into if you're looking to get started on the Power Fist. The next heroic option I think that players really sleep on is the heroic Instigator Carbine, and this was added in the same patch as the previous Death's Grasp Power Fist, and really all this one does is give you more base damage with a 5-round burst instead of a 3-round burst compared to the normal relic tier Instigator Carbines with slightly less accuracy. It turns out all this weapon needs to feel amazing was a base damage increase with a 5-round burst, and this weapon is shockingly ammo efficient and can actually one-tap burst headshot Majoris on both the Sniper and Vanguard with the proper perk setup, and the only real downside is that it has a bit more weapon spread at long range compared to the relic tier options, but that's really not that much of an issue for either of the classes this weapon is on, since the Vanguard wants to be a point blank or medium range anyways, and the Sniper already has way better long range options than an Instigator Carbine if he wants to do that instead, so you pretty much always slot this into a close range build regardless. It should also be mentioned that the Sniper's targeted shot ability will give you the 75% damage bonus to all 5 shots, since it does have a lingering duration, making it an amazing synergy perk for burst damage. Now, the next heroic weapon I actually had a hard time deciding on because it's actually pretty similar in power to another option. That's the heroic 3-round burst pistol. Now, this one was pretty shit for a while, but in patch 14 they did buff it up with a fat 15% base damage increase, and these days its gun strikes hit way harder and the damage is significantly better with perks like Elite Hunter on top of that buff. And just like the heroic heavy bolt pistol, this weapon is on every single class in the game, so if you do want to buy this one or Retribution's Request when you're just starting out, you just gave yourself a top tier gun strike option in the game right at level 1. It is also great for triggering perk effects like Pattern of Excellence, though unfortunately it does not trigger the targeted shot buff during lingering concealment like all the other bolt pistols do, but it's still a great option. Another great option in this game for heroic purchase, and one I think became top tier in pretty much a single patch, is the Combi Flamer. This is the heroic variant of the Bolt Carbine. It's based on the fully automatic version. It just has a Pyre Blaster attachment at the bottom, so this weapon kind of slaps. The automatic Bolt Carbines are one of the best range weapon archetypes in Space Marine 2 anyways, and this version gives you a Pyre Blaster attachment under your Bolt Carbine, so that is really useful for wiping out Minoris like Hormagaunts and even Zangors, and can also stack burn on stronger enemies pretty easily. This weapon also has the highest magazine capacity of any Bolt Carbine option in the game, and the only trade-offs are that your overall ammo capacity is lower and the bolter portion does ever so slightly less damage than the relic tier your automatic carbines. But buying this one will give you one of the best automatic bolt weapons in the entire game on 3 different classes immediately, and also helps you handle some of the more difficult scenarios for a new player. So whether you're just starting out or looking for a strong option, the Combi Flamer is a great heroic weapon. The next weapon I'll be talking about here was a hard placement for me between its other heroic variant, and that is the Salamander's Power Sword. Between this and the Xenophase Blade, I had a hard time choosing which heroic power sword I wanted to put here, but of the 2 options, in my opinion, the Salamander's Power Sword is currently the best one. This one's heroic perk effect is called Nocturne's Retort and lets you get Empower stacks every time you parry an enemy that will make your next light attack in speed style do 300% more damage. This makes the Salamander's Sword hit exceptionally hard for a fencing weapon, with the only downside being that the active parry window is reduced to be identical to a block weapon. But in some ways, that is a good thing, especially for newer players, since it teaches you block timings while retaining the parry gunstrike mechanics. This weapon also fits perfectly on classes like Tech Marine, since the damage buff on light attack synergizes with the servo gun gunstrikes. So the Salamander's Sword really is just a great heroic weapon pickup, and so is the Xenophase Blade if you want to grab that one instead, since I know a lot of you guys do love that one as well. If you have no idea how defense types or the stances for the Power Sword even work, I do have a full guide on the Power Sword in the video description. Now the next heroic weapon I want to mention here is a bit more niche, since it is only for the heavy class, and that is the Chains of Duty heroic heavy bolter. This is the only weapon on the heavy class that gives you a fencing parry window, making it one of the best options to avoid him getting stun locked in the game. The perk effect cools your weapon down entirely on any gun strike, and there's also a hidden effect that makes it so your heavy bolter reaches max fire rate the moment you pull the trigger, unlike the relic tier heavy bolter options. Heavy bolters are also just a ton of fun to play with in Space Marine 2, one of the main selling points of the heavy class in the first place, and considering this is the best variant in the game for the heavy bolter, I would definitely suggest picking it up. And if you want plasma instead, the heroic heavy plasma is also an incredibly strong choice. Now, the final 4 heroics we'll be talking about here are where we start to get into some truly top tier weapon options in the entire game, starting off with the White Scars Chainsword. This is the block heroic variant of the Chainsword, lets you stack 3 Adrenaline Surge stacks for massive damage, and the biggest selling point of this weapon is the speed. Block weapons in this game are usually the slowest weapon type and make up for it with the ability to stagger with Adrenaline Surge stacks and build up massive damage, but this weapon pretty much gets the best of both worlds, and with Saber's attempt of bringing back the old Artificer block Chainsword from year 1 before they reworked the weapon stat spreads in the game. It also has the added benefit that the final Adrenaline Surge stack lasts for 4 seconds instead of 2.4 like every other block weapon in the game, meaning you get to deal more damage and stagger for even longer than usual. Even though the White Scars Chainsword has lower damage than normal block Chainsword, it makes up for this with its heroic effect and really is one of the strongest melee weapons in Space Marine 2. And this brings us to the next heroic, which is the heroic Plasma Pistol. This thing is pretty much a heavy plasma incinerator attached to your secondary weapon slot, and unlike the regular Plasma Pistol, this one takes 5 business days to charge up, can only shoot charge shots, and will overheat immediately after the first one if you don't have the charge cooling perk. However, it does make up for this by being able to one-shot entire Majora's packs, and can even immediately put Extremis into execute with the proper build setup. This weapon is also available on nearly every class in the game, but it's usually best on classes that already have a primary weapon like the Tactical or Tech Marine, since using this one on the Assault or Bulwark leaves you with an awkward charge option with no primary alternative. That being said, this weapon is overall best in slot for damage on multiple classes and will dramatically improve build quality. One other weapon that dramatically improves build quality for other classes is the heroic heavy bolt rifle. This got added back in patch 12 with the Tech Marine update, and this is just a heavy bolt rifle with a grenade launcher slapped onto it, just like the standard relic bolt rifle variant. And it turns out all the heavy bolt rifle needed to be an S tier weapon in Space Marine 2 was a grenade launcher attachment, and I really can't see a universe in which a grenade launcher option is ever bad in these classes. Grenades are deceptively powerful in Space Marine 2. They'll recover tremendous amounts of contested health, give you massive AoE damage spam, and also stagger enemies like the missile cannon terminators. And because you get that stagger option on your primary weapon, it also lets you take other secondary options you might skip over against harder chaos ops instead as well. The heavy bolt rifle itself is also just a better bolter than the standard bolt rifle option anyways, so this one is really just all upside on top of having a better perk tree. The only real downside is that this weapon kind of sucks on the heavy class, as it doesn't have that great class synergy with him, but even there it's a decent option, and this weapon really is just one of the best heroic picks in the entire game. And this brings us to the final heroic weapon I'll be suggesting in this video, and I think many of you already know which one this is going to be, and that is the Argent Edge Combat Knife. This is the best heroic weapon in Space Marine 2 at the moment, in my opinion. The heroic perk effect deals free damage on every perfect parry, which is a nice bit of free damage all on its own, but the biggest benefit of this weapon is that it will stagger any enemy that is able to be staggered on the first parry parry no matter what. If you don't quite understand what this means, basically, in Space Marine 2, there are multiple enemies that have multi-hit attack chains that will only give you a staggered gunstrike opportunity on their final hit, but when you use the Argent Edge, you will instead skip to the gunstrike immediately on the first parry, which makes it the best defensive weapon in Space Marine 2, since these attack chains are usually the major cause of stun locks in the first place. Now, the only downside of this weapon is that just like the Salamander Power Sword, your perfect parry window is reduced, but that's barely a downside here, since the perk effect is so strong, and this weapon is the best in slot for 3 out of the 4 classes it's on, and by far the best fencing weapon in the game. So whether you are just starting out or you have 1,000 hours in Space Marine 2, the Argent Edge is an incredible pick. And that is every single heroic weapon I want to talk about in this video, guys. Hopefully this gave you a better idea of some of the heroic options you might want to pick up with your hard-earned accolades. And like I said at the beginning of this video, if you don't like these heroic weapons and you want a different one instead, just buy the one that interests you first. I see people obsessed with the most powerful options in horde shooters all the time, but Space Marine 2 is just not that kind of game, and you should play with whatever you find fun. If you like content like this, subscribe for more, and if you want to ask me questions about the game or just come hang out, you can find me here on YouTube or on Twitch with a link in the video description, alongside a link to my community Discord. I also want to say a special thank you to my channel members. You guys help me make guides like this every single day, and as always, thank you for watching. Take it easy. Bye.